Good morning. Happy Thursday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect.
So let's take like the heels elevated squat, for example. So
Yes,
I
sir.
see people use like kind of varying degrees of a heel elevation. And it
Yes, sir.
seems to be like with a super aggressive heel elevation, you're almost blocked from even getting like into like a deep position, or you're almost blocked from getting into like a state of inhalation at like the pelvis. It's almost like a scenario where you're so inclined that you're like biased past eccentric orientation. Can you kind of just comment and reflect on like what might potentially be going on there with like a super high heel elevation?
Right. So you're playing with center of gravity. So it stands to reason that there's going to be a sweet spot where you're going to, where whatever your capabilities will be at that point in time, if you're depending on what you're trying to maximize, there's going to be a sweet spot, right? So we have all the variations of platforms and stuff, and we can go from, I think, what is the lowest 10, Eric? 10, highest is 30, and if you get on the 30, you can kind of tell. If you were walking downhill and you didn't want to fall face first down the hill, you have to lean backwards depending on the inclination of the hill. So the steeper I put you on a platform, it is likely that at some point in time, I'm going to actually get the opposing response of what I might be chasing if posterior expansion is my goal. Because again, it's just pure center of gravity issues, and you are absolutely correct. And so more is not better, better is better.
That makes sense. It looked funny to me, and I didn't even feel like. And I've kind of played around with it, and I've seen people
Yeah,
do
yeah,
hey, if I'm trying to get quad hypertrophy for with like a cyclist squat, like I've seen people justify that.
yeah.
But to me, for like the goal of like movement restoration, that didn't seem to like make a lot of sense. So
Right, right. I think the look funny test is a very useful test, right? Because it something catches your eye that you go, and it's not that you necessarily have to know what it is. It's just like you go, that's not really what I was shooting for. And so I think it's fair that you make that judgment, right? As long as that you're making a safe to fail experiment, right? You never want to you don't want to compromise anybody and put them in a situation where they're going to get hurt, right? But I think that the eyeball test works.
makes sense.
You ever read the book Outliers?
A while ago on audiobook.
Okay, probably one of the better ways to actually consume that information. I always tell folks, I said, read the first chapter of Outliers and then throw the book away, because it's all in the first chapter as to what he's talking about. But there's a story about this guy watching a tennis match. I think he's a tennis coach. It's been a long time since I read it, and he's watching this guy serve, and his predictive capability of when this guy is going to double fault is ridiculous. Like his accuracy is ridiculously high. He's just watching the match and he can't figure out what it is that he's seeing that tells him when this guy's going to double fault, but he sees it. And so we all have this, to a certain degree, once we start to capture some experience where we'll see things and we'll go, that's not really what I wanted to see, but I'm not really sure what to do. Then it's just about layering experience on top of that to allow you to identify when you see these things and then to figure out what is that. And that's essentially what we all do. I mean, the longer you're in this, I mean, I've been doing this for more than 30 years now. So it's like, people say, well, how did you see all that? It's like, well, because I've been staring at people for 30 years. Like get more reps and you get better at it. So again, Artie, I think that what you're seeing is right on, right? So hang on, Jim Ferris, you don't have a hat on right now, do you?
No.
Okay. So Matt's got a hat on, Nate's got a hat on, and Vinny's got a hat on. I am the guy that invented the backwards hat, just for the record. I was born before all of you. I just want to make this very, very clear. I was 8. I started the trend and it just spread like wildfire. Grace, break out your notebook. We need a question. Come on, help me out.
I have a client who has been hip shifting out of his heavy squats, but it is only when he's on the ascent. and he's shifting all the way over to the right.
Awesome. Like his
So
butt goes right?
yes,
Is there a curve?
curve meaning what?
Like, is it look like a side bend through his trunk and his butt kind of scoots to the right?
Yep, and his chest rotates to the left.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
And he like loses. Has no shoulder.
No IR in the right shoulder at all, right?
Yeah.
You know why? Because he has no IR on the right hip either. Okay. So what he's doing, so when we talk about the propulsive phase, especially at higher levels of force, the amount of pressure that you have to put into the ground is rather significant. Otherwise, the weight crushes you in a heavy squat, right? So as you push up, I have to be able to capture a position of internal rotation. So all he's doing is he's trying to find a part of his body that will allow him to turn the force down into the ground. And so when you see a side bend or a hip hike, those are or like a shoulder shrug or anything like that. Those are all substitutions for internal rotation, or they're demonstrating their lack of internal rotation. And so they're just getting it somewhere else. That's what you're seeing right there. So, you know, if you were to try to do this, like, let's just say you did it bilaterally, right? Simultaneously, bilaterally, what you would see, you'd see like knees tracking inward. You would see an increased arch, you know, in the lower back. Those are all substitutions for internal rotation. And so that's all you're seeing. Like in the big picture, you know, the solution might be a little bit more complex than that, but that's why you're seeing that.
Because I'm wondering if he'll then kind of reach a threshold at this point with this limitation and no access to that IR shape on the left.
Right, right. And so then he starts topping out, right? So now no more progress. And then all you're going to get is you're going to get a stress-related load that might turn into something bad, right? Because every time you compress in that strategy, where do you think the load's going to go? Because he's looking for internal rotation. Instead of distributing the internal rotation throughout his whole body, he's putting it in one big place, right? Like the acute curve of that side bend and that hip shift, that's where the load's going. That's why we don't want to see that kind of stuff, because that's what's going to lead towards bad stuff, right? Yeah. It's not just bad technique, it's focal load that can change things, right? And we don't want a constraint change, because those tend to be, you know, undesirable for many reasons.
For anything appendicular, like knee or elbow pain, I definitely feel less confident treating that. So particularly like anterior knee pain, where it's not, you know, medial or laterally focused, if they have like decent hip range of motion, where are you going from there?
Okay, wait a minute. Are we talking about an elbow? Or are we talking about a knee?
Just knee for right now.
Okay. The two big tests that I use for knees is extension and flexion. Where the pain is initially less of a concern. Like the location can kind of tell you a little bit about the knee. So if I have like a medial knee pain, I tend to have a femur that's internally rotated on an externally rotated tibia. If I have lateral knee pain, I tend to have a tibia that is so far externally rotated that it dragged the femur with it. And so they're both kind of turned outward, right? So under those circumstances, you can tell the medial and lateral stuff. When you have an anterior, like just kind of like that broad generalized kind of anterior knee pain kind of a thing. So think about it, it's like I'm driving force through the knee from posterior to anterior under most circumstances, which means that I don't have turns available to me, right? So I'm going to load it straight through the knee. And so when you think about, you understand what a screw home is, right? Okay. So do they have screw home? Which means that I should have some representation of, if we talk about traditional extension measures, you're probably going to look at 5 to 10 degrees of hyperextension in a knee passively. And then I should have heel to butt flexion. Okay. And those are the two biggies for me. It's like, can I extend the knee and can I flex the knee fully? And so if I can't, that means I have a rotational problem. So when you say decent hip range of motion, not really sure what that represents, but let's just say that you've cleaned up the hip and the pelvis and the axial skeleton, and so everything looks all fine and wonderful there. And then you go to the knee and you go, oh, I can't. They're like 4 or 5 inches, you know, from heel to butt, right? And so that would be indicative of somebody that probably can't internally rotate the tibia enough to bend the knee to normal range. And so that's where I would spend my time. So the goal is to provide the human being with as many options as possible, so they can select what they need to do within any frame of context from a movement standpoint.